How's that? Oh, that's much better. Good. And so the idea is you're going to see these, and these are kind of pulled off by themselves. You know, a lot of these are rentals. A lot of these are tax delinquent. A lot of these are other things that we've talked about. But we're going to talk specifically about these for probably half an hour, and then about a half an hour on the last couple things. Go ahead, please. So how do we deal with an overabundance of two-bedroom housing? There's always going to be a need for two-bedroom housing, whether it's apartments or whether it's homes. But we have much more than other areas. You can see it's apparently, again, did this last year, but the northwest is the worst. But even down across the south, we have more than the rest of Butler County in the state of Ohio. Go ahead, please. This showed this before. And the idea would be if we wanted to look like the rest of Butler County, what would we have to do to our housing stock as far as bedrooms so that we look like the rest of Butler County? And the answer is you'd have to knock down about 400 one and two bedroom places and replace them with 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms to look like the rest of Butler County. Again, I'm not sure we're ever going to be a Westchester. Not that that's a goal, but it's more for comparison and discussion purposes that we have way more than the market probably is going to bear. And it gets into that starter home process of if all we have is 2 bedrooms and people start growing their families and doing things, what happens then, of course, is if we don't have 3, 4 bedrooms for them to move to, obviously they're going to have to leave the community and go somewhere else and to find their next home. So go ahead, please. An overabundance of houses under $100,000. We have 55.4% of our housing under $100,000. If you look at Ohio as a whole, they're at 34.5%. So we have about 20% more starter homes than the rest of the state of Ohio. You can see on the red, that's the entire western half of the city. And again, there's a market for that. Great starter homes. You have some of the coolest starter homes, I think, in Southwest Ohio. You got some great places where you can get an 80 to 100-year-old home with beautiful woodwork and all the stuff. But again, we have so much of it that as these people move in and they do great things and they do that and they get married and they start having kids and they start to move up, again, whether it's can't do anything with it, or whether it's smaller home, 100,000 and under, and you're growing in your family, you're going to end up having to leave the community as you succeed and grow your family. Go ahead, please. Same type of analysis. If we wanted to look like Butler, the rest of Butler County, we'd have to eliminate about 3,000 homes under 100,000 and replace them with 150 to 200,000 plus homes. Again, that's not necessarily a goal we want, but just for discussion purposes to understand where we are out of balance with the entire rest of Butler County. So we are carrying much more of the 2 bedrooms. We're carrying much more of the smaller homes. We're carrying much more of the lower priced homes than the rest of the county, which means we, of course, are locking in those people. We're always recruiting to the lowest common denominator because those families that are growing both in career and in their size of their families are moving up to other places. So we're consistently trying to backfill on the smaller, cheaper homes in the city. That gets into our income tax. It gets into all the things that we want to do to make the city better. Go ahead, please. Remember, we talked about the Danter study a couple times. Danter said if we could build them, and we had space and empty land and everything else, that we could do 127 homes and 33 condos for each of the next 5 years. And there's demand right now in Middletown for those units. Again, we don't have the land, we don't have the ability to do it, but it gets you that idea of, again, as people are leaving the community, if we had the more expensive housing, if we had the higher bedroom housing, a lot of those people would stay in the community as they became more successful and grew their family. Go ahead, please. We do have some tools available. We've talked about removing the lower value homes from some of our industrial areas right around the AK fence. Again, the idea would be if we have so many starter homes and we start removing them, then obviously our percentages start to change simply by removing the 2-bedroom rentals in poor neighborhoods and all that stuff that does not work. You could add a master suite. We are going to get into some neighborhoods where we think the housing's solid. There's a nice, great 2-bedroom house here. The entire rest of the street's in good shape, and it's empty. In limited cases, it may make sense to add a master suite or something out the back, make it a 3-bedroom, increase the value, make it more attractive. Infill construction, you'll see that coming up in November. We'll talk about some of that and some ways other communities have made that successful. And I think we should require any infill construction to have to be at least 3 bedrooms and over 100,000, again, to add value to the neighborhood. Again, give people places to go as their family grows. And then new construction would be the same type of thing. If you're going to do a Sawyer Mill or something like that, we obviously want those to be in the upper level, similar to what the Danter study would say. Go ahead, please. Characteristics of a healthy neighborhood. I looked at this 2 ways. The first one is infrastructure. And again, it's going to be an easy discussion with the 4 of you, but the types of things that define a healthy neighborhood: paved streets, up-to-date sidewalks and curbs. I think we need to talk a lot about alleys as we move forward. Street lighting and house lighting, parks, recreation, gateways into neighborhoods. Those are all the type of infrastructure things that the city would normally be involved in. And as we start picking neighborhoods, we'll start talking about how can we do every street, do every sidewalk. Do we want tree-lined streets? Do we want, all those types of things, landscaping, gateways? Do we want to upgrade the park? Do we want to add, again, recreation programs and things in the park? A lot of our parks right now are passive parks. We mow them, and if you want to use them, come on out. But we don't actually do much in them in most cases. Go ahead, please. Characteristics, this is again our paving. No surprise to anybody, we're $160 million behind in paving. Even our newer neighborhoods are now at their 25 years. Many of them are at their time they should be starting to be repaved. And of course, the south and the west side of the city, many of those streets are almost a failure. They're in such bad shape. $161 million to put it back together. We're not going to be able to do that obviously all at one time, but if we pick a neighborhood that has 4 or 5 streets, we can concentrate our effort in one area and get that piece of neighborhoods, those 4, 8, 900 homes, whatever neighborhood we choose, we can put that neighborhood back together. Go ahead, please. Gateways, a lot of our newer subdivisions, when they were built, have nice gateways in them. We should probably look at all of our neighborhoods. Be great to get the neighbors, when we get to a neighborhood, to have them help us decide what that neighborhood looks like, what that gateway looks like. I think the city, if we get that far, could set some standards on, it's going to be wrought iron, it's going to be, here's the 5 things it can be, here's how big it can be in relation to the lot. I mean, if we could set some standards, then we could bring the neighborhood in and say, it has to be like one of these. We don't want something bad, or we don't want something made of wood that 5 years from now is going to rot. But if we have 7 different ways that we could do a gateway into your neighborhood, help us to pick out which one you want for your neighborhood. And again, maybe there's 1 or 2 gateways depending on how the neighborhood's laid out. Street lighting, we're going to be hopefully in November bringing to City Council a conversion for all of our street lights to LED. Also, there are standards laid out on street lighting as how much lighting should be on the street. And some of our streets, some of our newer neighborhoods are much lighter, much better lighting than some of the older neighborhoods where they're spread out and the old incandescent bulbs are not very bright. The idea is for crime and those things, get that standard, figure out what it is. Will the LED be bright enough that we can meet the standard? If not, do we need to start, good evening, do we need to start pulling in some of our street lights? In other words, if there's 6 street lights on that street, do we need to, I need some engineer somewhere to tell me, do the math, you really need 8 if you're going to make that street under the standard. So how would we do that? Working with Duke, who would we reposition the poles for us, all of that. Alleyways, our alleys are just not good, frankly. And that's not the case in a lot of cities. We need to talk about what that looks like. These are some beautiful alleys that I pulled off of other places. I saw something really cool when I was in Kansas City a couple years ago at the International City Managers Conference. And they took us out to a neighborhood in Kansas City that had been one of the worst neighborhoods in Kansas City. And it had been renovated, new families were moving in, and they had completely redone the alleyways in a way, and they walked us down there where the alleyway was now the focus of the neighborhood. It was kind of like many of our neighborhoods where the house is fairly close to the street and the lots go back, and the garage was towards the back, as you would expect, and people had their TVs mounted in the garage, and that was the place where everybody hung out and watched the football game. That was the place where you and your neighbor sat and worked on your motorcycles and talked about sports, and that became the cool place for that. And you could walk down they walked us down the front, and we were like, oh, these are really pretty, and then they go, wait till you see the back. And you walk down the back, and everybody's out there, you know, Ohio State's on the big screen, but again, they took in control of that neighborhood again, so everybody felt safe. Nobody was worried about their tools getting stolen. Nobody was worried about their TV getting stolen. They had changed that neighborhood, the whole complexion and nature of that neighborhood, so that people were using the alleys as a gathering place, more so than the front of the houses, because there was only, 8 foot between the house and the street. It was really cool. I would like to look at lighting our alleyways. We have a lot of crime in our alleyways where people do drug deals and they drive down the alleyways, they meet, they do their drug deal, they both go down different ways, out the side. What if they're lighted? What if they even have motion lights on them? So that we're not bothering anybody that lives back there, but if all of a sudden it's going down there at 2 o'clock in the morning, bink, 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 and people go, who's out in my alley? My guess is a lot of that crime would start to go away. It would be displaced to other dark places in the city if you could do that.
Aren't most of our alleys, though, for purposes of garbage collection?
And a lot of it for parking. A lot of people have parking back there. Right. And so that's what they're doing coming in and out. So,
because I'm just looking at those pictures. And
yeah, those are
not alleys.
No.
Garbage trucks go down.
Right.
If you could convert it to most of our garbage having to go out to the street, then you're going to keep the alleys a lot cleaner and that type of thing.
And that's where we pick our first neighborhood and we decide how do we want to change that? What do we want to do? Do we want to expand the right of way on both sides and clean out down the alley? Maybe there's a 3 foot buffer down, because a lot of those they grow in and almost to the place where you're scraping your car with bushes and stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Some of the in the community what we're talking about.
Right.
There are houses back there. Amazingly enough.
No, it's not amazing.
And so that's a real concern.
We have been out, yeah.
Issue.
We go out and there's no record of a house there, and there's literally a house there.
Like an additional
Yes,
house.
an additional cottage. Yeah, it's not a garage that's been converted. Somebody has built a house without a single permit of any kind at some point in the past. It is interesting. I agree. So, those are all things when we start getting into the infrastructure of what a healthy neighborhood looks like. When we pick, we'll look at the streets, we'll look at the alleys, we'll look at the street lighting, we'll look at all these, is there a gateway? Is it old and tired, or does it need to be updated, or is there nothing there? How would we create it? Where would we put it? How many do we need? Those are all the kinds of things from the infrastructure level that we will be looking at as we start talking about what neighborhood we're going to use and how we're going to start renovating it. Go ahead, please. Parks. I have one of the goals for Public Works in the 2019 budget is a parks master plan. We have about 30 parks in this community, and as I said a little bit ago, they're mostly passive parks, which means we mow them, we have some playground equipment there, and if you want to use it, come on over. We don't do anything, we don't have anything there, we don't man it in any way. Question is, are we happy with that as a community, or should we go to 20 parks and have a recreation program? Or should we go to 10 parks, big parks, and have a bigger recreation program? Or, it can be, honestly, whatever the community wants. I always like to blow people's minds. I said, what if we made Smith Park residential housing and we made somewhere else the new Smith Park? And they're like, oh my God, you can't do that. It's like, it's been that way forever. I go, I know, but let me nudge you to think. I'm not really suggesting we close down Smith Park, but I'd like you to think. It's been like this forever. Does that mean it's the best thing for the city moving forward? On our parks.
It's a nice commercial area over there.
Right. You could do some nice things over there. Maybe. But those are the right questions to ask, is do we have 30 parks and we mow them, and if you want to go over, go ahead. Because a lot of them don't get a lot of use. So Could we turn some of those into housing? Again, solve some of our home ownership issues, solve all 3 bedrooms, all whatever, the things that we say we want to do. Could we take a park of 15 acres, 10 acres, and put how many houses, whatever number of houses, density we want to do there? So that's the style of the things we should talk about. And then obviously if we're picking one neighborhood, what's the park in that neighborhood and what are we going to do with that particular park?
Yeah, and like you say, in today's environment, kids aren't using the parks anymore. They're sitting behind the computer playing video games.
Right.
So why do you need those parks?
And there are some cool newer things that seem to be, again, I know not even enough to be dangerous, but there are some things that are newer things in parks that get people to hopefully come out and try different things that, grab those kids and be a different nature of a park that would allow them to do it. Also tying into local industry, I read a couple articles over the last couple of years where for Middletown, it would be like AK Steel. You would take a park and a lot of big communities like a Detroit or some of those would take whatever the industry is of that community and they would tie it into their parks. And so for us, like it might be an old blast furnace from AK Steel. It might be old pieces of equipment that they would make almost like public art and they would put in different parks. And then I think this blast furnace worked from 1929 to 1974, processed a gazillion, trillion tons of steel and, make it part of the community. Again, tie who we are into the parks as you're renovating them, and then hopefully get, AK and other places to help us maybe renovate those parks. Be part of their stuff, but part of the heritage of who we are. Go ahead, please.
What about partnering with, say, Metro Parks, Butler Metro Parks, for programming?
They are doing some work at the community center for the community garden, at least last time I had talked to them, which was a couple years ago. And they're doing some stuff they're going to be doing stuff at the River Center and Bicentennial Commons. That's as far as we've taken it so far, at least from what I've heard. But that's not a bad idea. Yeah, if we can't, we have talked to the Y about downtown Y. If I could supply some money for shirts and soccer balls and this, could you run a league for us? Because we don't have the staff to do that. And they've said, if you get that far, come talk to us. We would be interested in helping you do that. So it could be Metro Parks, could be the Y, could be, again, somebody like that who could help us in a better way. Every time we use Pee Wee's football and softball, somebody takes the money. But if we could get an organization like the Y or somebody involved that was professionals, I think we could partner with somebody like that or the Butler Metro Parks, and we'd probably be okay. So those are the kind of questions, though, that I think our Parks Master Plan should ask. What should be at these parks? And if we build it, will they come? We've tried a couple times to get a dog park. People just seem to lose their mind. Some people love a dog park, and others like, oh, I would never allow a dog park here. It'll smell like poop all the time. It doesn't, but okay. And so those are the types of questions. Do we want to have a dog park? Where would it be? And how would we incorporate that into one of our 30 parks? All kinds of stuff that we can talk about. Missing amenities. We know that a lot of our homes, especially the smaller ones, often have missing amenities that people nowadays kind of come to expect. A garage to park your car, recreational activities in the neighborhood, off-street parking, number of bathrooms. If it's a smaller place and there's one bathroom and you got 3 kids, that's tough. You can make it work, but it's tough. Updated electric, all those kinds of things. It is. And so not only is it the 2-bedroom, not only is it the small dollar amount or the small size, it's also, if I have a choice between going to another community or dealing with some of this, I may go to the other community because these houses are just not as competitive, not just as attractive for us moving forward. Go ahead, please. And then the other are the non-infrastructure characteristics. Aside from the housing, aside from the streets, aside from the sidewalks, how about Wi-Fi access for our kids that need to do their homework in lower income neighborhoods? How about neighborhood business needs, a local grocery store, if it's in a grocery store, a convenience store, access to healthcare, access to retail. How about food deserts? We have some of those in Middletown. Smart city concepts. We're talking with Steve Hightower about using some of the shot spotter technology in the South End, setting up some smart city stuff to allow us to do better on crime. School readiness, tutoring, daycare, transportation, crime, and I'll let you guys, I don't want these to get too far away, but these are three, and I've been to a class in Louisville last year, and if you guys want to take, there are some really nice stuff being done on using neighborhood design to reduce crime. And what they do is they use fencing, landscaping, lighting, how you position buildings and stuff that you basically reduce the tendency to have crime. And you start, there's a lot of cool concepts in there, but the very first thing is to do what you have said all along, is you go to that neighborhood and you say, where don't you feel safe? And you let them tell you. And the answer is, a friend of mine always said, if you can walk your dog at 10 o'clock at night and you feel safe, you probably are. If you don't feel like you're safe walking your dog at 10 o'clock at night, something's not right. Something's not right. And so you go to that neighborhood and you say, what's not right? And they go, well, I feel good on this street, but that street's dark and that one scares me. Okay, we need to deal with that. I go here, but nobody goes over there at night. We need to figure out what that is and look at these different concepts and talk about how can we do something. Is it a lighting issue? Is it a obstructive building issue? Is it the trees and bushes are so bad that if you get close, you're afraid somebody can grab you issue? And all three of these books talk about those types of things and how you can redesign little aspects of the neighborhood so that people feel safer and they actually are safer. Because again, big bushes and you're afraid somebody's going to grab you. Well, maybe you take those bushes out and you put, some other landscaping in that is, again, safer. You use fencing to define public and non-public areas and semi-public areas. This is my yard. You probably shouldn't come into it. And there's some really interesting, as you read them, 90% of people will not violate a hedge. If you put a hedge up right here, 95% of the people won't hop it and go into that area. They just accept that as a barrier they're not supposed to go around. And so you can use landscaping, you can use wrought iron fencing, you can use, again, LED lighting and positioning of stuff in a way that helps. And again, you start that with the neighborhood where you say, where don't you feel safe? And then you start dealing with it. Well, we never go out the alley after dark. We're scared back there. Okay, why? Let's figure out, is it a lighting issue? Is it, no, all the brush has grown up and we don't feel safe being, what is it that makes you feel unsafe? And then you start dealing with those. And then you use these concepts to design a neighborhood as you're fixing the infrastructure to design out some of those things that are naturally going to cause people anxiety or crime or whatever. And so a lot of cool stuff in there that we should incorporate into some of our discussions. But recreational opportunities, how about workforce training, landscaping, trees? We can talk about tree-lined streets. We can do all this stuff that we can talk about. But these are kind of the non-infrastructure, the soft, whatever you want to call them, soft characteristics of a neighborhood. If you had all of those and you designed out the crime and your infrastructure's fixed and all your housing's fixed, you probably have a pretty nice neighborhood. I mean, it solves the issues. So these are the kinds of things as we look and we pick a neighborhood, we're going to get all these stuff. And I have a lot of this stuff. I have things like this, different programs that have been used in other cities, different things that we can go. They seem to have a thing here. I go, oh, that's transportation. I've got some ideas on that. Let's get out our stuff on transportation and talk about different ways we could look at that. And each one of those we'll talk about crime and daycare and all that stuff, food deserts, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the ending piece of that. Go ahead, please. So that kind of gets us to the end of the global issues. We started with, I think, tax delinquent property. We moved through all these big, high-type things, housing and rental and vacant land, and now kind of have a lay of the land. And we also have a beginning discussion of, it's about this bad, and here's 4 or 5 things we could look at if we wanted to make changes in those areas. And we've now gone through all these different areas, and we've had some preliminary discussions on all these things. In November, and I'm going to try to, if we can get a couple emails out to the group, it would be really nice if almost everybody could come in November. It's November 8th. We're only going to do it once because we've got Thanksgiving at the end of the month. Dan Mason is a developer out of Dayton. He presented to the Historical Commission this week with his concept. He's going to take over the Carnegie Library. He's bought the Carnegie Library. Excuse me. He would like to redevelop the entire Baltimore neighborhood, 900 some houses, the entire neighborhood, with the city's help. He's laid it out for us in about 10 pages of this is how I would do it. This is how we did it in the Grafton neighborhood in Dayton. Grafton property values went up about 230%. He'll have the exact number, but they more than doubled over a 10-year period. And he has some ideas. They're doing now a survey of all the houses, all the vacant lots, to get an idea of what it would require to do the Baltimore neighborhood. So he would like to come in November and share that. He's going to be November 6th at council to show you guys that, but November 8th, he's going to come here, and he wants to say, this is what we did in Dayton, this is what I think we could do in the Baltimore neighborhood, and then, again, now that we've had all these discussions about all these different areas, this is a chance for the group to say, yeah, but what about this? What about the property owners who live there? If their property goes up 220%, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to this? Well, what about this? What about this? He should be able to answer all those for us because he's already done it in Grafton. He knows what he's looking at here. But now you guys have a much better idea of the right questions to ask. This is my neighborhood. How is that going to work? How are you going to make that so that it's good for me? We'll work on the streets. We'll work on the sidewalks. We'll get our CDBG money out. We'll do our thing. But we do this, and we do so much infill construction, and we fill some homes, and we renovate some homes, and we get all these things, and everything gets fixed, and it does what it did in Grafton. What does that mean? And how does it work? And so he's a very charismatic guy. He's a very talented guy. He's an architect, very sharp. I like him a lot. He's very smart. He's done good work in Dayton. And so the idea is to bring him here and have him in detail talk about that neighborhood and how he would attack that grouping of housing and redevelop it into a thriving neighborhood again. And I will tell you, everything he says starts with, very first thing is neighborhood meetings. To sit down with the people that are already there and talk about, this is what we're trying to do, this is why we're trying to do it, this is the benefit for you. Let me on the front end try to answer a lot of your questions so I don't scare you on the front end. And so we will bring him on November 8th, and then after we've done that, when we get to December, we'll just do the one meeting in December because then we'll be into Christmas. The idea will be, we've heard from him, we've had him answer our questions. Now we've got all the global stuff. We got a specific example of how it might work in our neighborhoods. What I would love to do is let him have the Baltimore neighborhood if we think that's a good thing, and council will have to sign off on that and talk about, is that where we want to go? But I would love to, if we believe the concept is valid, I would love the city to pick a second neighborhood and start doing a lot of the same types of things that he's going to be doing in a second neighborhood. And so the question in December will be, I'm going to try to gather a list of neighborhoods using some of the old stuff that we've had before on troubled neighborhoods. Here's 7 troubled neighborhoods. Dan's going to take Baltimore.
What are the perimeters of Baltimore? Woodlawn to Central?
Yeah.
And then it would go, what, Curtis over to the cemetery?
He's got it laid out. It's like this.
Okay.
He's got it laid out. It's from Vale on south, basically, swath of several, Young, Garfield. And he'll lay it out, and he's got an end point down there. Yeah. But if we think the concept's valid and we think the things we've been talking about work, then I'll say, okay, there's 7 others here. How are we going to pick one? What should we do to pick one of these neighborhoods? Do we involve the neighborhoods? Do we do it as a group here? How do we pick the next neighborhood that we're going to work on? If Dan's going to do that one, and we'll support him with some of the things that he needs from us. But how could we do a similar project on a second neighborhood? Wouldn't it be cool to have two neighborhoods being completely renovated at one time? Yes, ma'am.
Also, I would hope that we would think about the streets on either side that, because I've been in the Grafton neighborhood.
Yeah.
That he's worked on, and there's other projects, and many of those houses were bigger than some of the houses that we have a different hodgepodge in that area that he's talking about. We have some good sized places and some that are not, you know, or the bedrooms are very, very small. It might
Right.
be 3 bedrooms, but I'm thinking, for instance, of the streets, 1 or 2 on either side, which then end up having some challenges based on the renovations that you're doing, and perhaps there's some kind of auxiliary program.
I think that's a good question to ask him. What happened to the neighborhoods on both sides? And he may say, I don't care, that wasn't me. I don't know. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Is there any data on migratory patterns of citizens in neighborhoods that get torn down based on demographics? The reason why I ask that is to say that, you know, when the decision that we make, say Baltimore is torn down and those people start to migrate towards another community, what outcomes does that create versus?
I think that gets into the gentrification issue. Are we going to displace somebody? Are we okay with that? And if we are, what do we do to help those people find different housing? And where and how? Because in other words, I don't want to move them from Baltimore. If they're in a crappy house in Baltimore, I don't want to move them over here to a crappy house and then 5 years later go, now we're going to kick you out of that crappy house because we're going to renovate this neighborhood. Let's be a little more creative than that. You know, if we're going to move you, let's move you once and get you in some place that you can afford that is quality housing.
That's the key. You might wind up pricing some people out of their own neighborhood, because if you improve it to the point that the taxes go up.
Well, and there are CRA programs that we can put in place for residential that I can't protect you forever, but I can protect you for 5 to 10 years. That, you know, if the property values double, and for 10 years I protect your property taxes, whatever it goes up, you're only responsible. Those programs are out there and well laid out. Now, at year 10, you're going to have to make some decision. Your $80,000 house is now $160,000 or $175,000 house. You can either start paying the taxes, or maybe you want to sell that $175,000 house and do something different. I can't protect you forever, but I also can't improve the neighborhood without improving the neighborhood. But those are the right questions to ask. Those are exactly the right questions to ask, is how do we, the people that are there now and then the people who are going to stay, and as it changes, what things do we need to have in effect to the best of our ability?
My question is not just on the end of affordability, but also socially, because you start blending neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Neighborhoods have different characteristics, and, you know, say you got an elderly community which might be low income, and they get this influx of children.
Yeah.
Or, you know, young adults who are coming from another low-income neighborhood that might have a different set of challenges.
Correct.
Is there a way to guide that?
That's part of the current South End concern,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the reason that, just the fact that when we look at, there have been traditionally lots of problems, but part of the problems now are the very different individuals trying to coexist in the same block.
Yeah.
And that part of the safety concerns, and, you know, even when we talk about my particular property, it's like I remember knowing the person that lived next door,
Yeah.
and now I don't, several people later. Although the landowner, you know, so I mean, we're 6 tenants down, but maybe only 3 owners.
Yeah.
Since the lady left. And so those are some of the issues that we're currently dealing with, but looking at the process in some way that it's not as disruptive for some people who probably are into the last 10 years of their home ownership
Right.
situation, realistically speaking. I'm not going to be living in my house in 10 years unless something very different changes.
Right.
I want to stay there.
But, and this is what makes this so hard. This is why when I started this with the 1963 master plan, I went, there's your problem neighborhoods. It hadn't been fixed for a reason, because it's really hard. And so if it's been a problem for 30, 40, 50 years, we know what doesn't work, what we've done the last 30 or 40 years. So we got to change something. And so we got to talk about what that means. And the answer is we'll screw this up at some, no matter how well we lay this out, we will hurt some people. We won't intend to, but there will be unintended consequences. I made at the last meeting, I said, I'm going to be politically incorrect, stereotyping. Every bad thing you can do in one sentence, I'm going to do it. I said, but we could put incentives that we want Middletown City School District teachers to live in the city. And I could go into Baltimore neighborhood and I could sell 50 houses to 25-year-old white girls. Say I said 50 teachers, 50 houses are now owned by 25-year-old single white girls. And I said, again, please apologize for my total lack of political correctness, but that changes the neighborhood. They're homeowners, they're paying taxes, the home's been renovated, but that neighborhood is now different. Because those 25-year-old white girls have a totally different lifestyle. And so how do we feel about that? The answer is we can tailor things almost any way we want to, but we have to think, how do you do that constructively? Because there'll be things I won't, if I give it to teachers, I know most of them are in their 20s, and, I kind of know but what if they're nurses? I don't know, I could get guys, I could get girls, I could get young, I could get older, what if we need nurses at Atrium and want to help them? That's a little less.
Well, we're also looking at trying to change the demographic of the white middle American teacher who's doing this urban teaching cohort.
Right.
For, student loan forgiveness, and then I'm really out of here. Even if I do own the house, it'll just be my rental property. So,
But
we're talking about the other issues.
We have the ability to put deed restrictions and things on those that, we always have the ability, especially if it's gone through us in some way, through the land bank or through the city, we can put deed restrictions on those that can only be used for certain things, or there's a clawback. If you sell it, you got to pay back, you owe the city $25,000 or something. I mean, we can do almost anything that is legal and ethical you can lay into the program but again, if we could get a bunch of urban teachers in here and raise our school scores, and every 5 years some of them moved and new urban teachers came in, I'm not sure I care. Right. If the kids are getting better schooling and the houses are filled and everybody's paying their income tax and we're not taking a hit in some other way and it's not turning right back into a bad rental, we have some controls on that. Maybe I don't care if every 5 years that house turns to another urban teacher.
If the goal, which was to improve the schools.
Yeah.
If we're hitting that goal.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And maybe you get to a place down the road where the test scores are back up, and maybe you don't need to do that anymore. Maybe you discontinue the teacher program, and AK now needs engineers.
And there's a program already for that, not only teachers, but other public servants,
Yeah.
police, fire, and all that.
Fire, police, doctors, nurses, there's all kinds of.
Public service loan forgiveness, but
Yeah.
there's a lot leaves a lot. It's a 10-year program, and a lot of it you never see any real evidence of it until you've done your 10 years of public service. But when we're thinking about the educator piece, I mean, they get that there's the Teach America, there are all of these things, but we're, in partnership with schools, we've got to be a little bit more creative.
I agree.
That's the incentive.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're heading next. We'll hear from Dan Mason in November. I encourage you to push him hard. He's a very talented, smart guy. He should be able to answer your questions. And if he can't, council may want to wait to tell him we want to do this until he gives everybody the right answers. I think that's fair.
This PowerPoint, a hard copy or an electronic that you can send to me, because when we have the CARE meeting, I want to share with them that there is an opportunity
Absolutely.
to see some things coming down the pike, and we're going to really work with some of the other communities, Pastor Weston, et cetera, to see if we can get some people to say, if you have an interest,
Yeah.
get involved.
One of the last things, and I'll let you all get out of here, that's good, 45 minutes, is the press, the Middletown Journal has asked if they could start coming to some of these meetings, and I said, while we were doing the global stuff and just talking about, general, but as we get into Dan's presentation and starting to talk about picking up neighborhood stuff, I think it would be great to have him start running a series of articles on the process we're going through, and to have him ask you folks, what do you think? What are you concerned about? This is exactly the conversation. But I think now we're at a place where it's time to start bringing the public back in to talk about, this is what we've been talking about. These are the things. You can read all this stuff. You can look at all this stuff. But we're getting now to the nuts and bolts of what would we do in Middletown and how would we apply it. I think it'd be great to have some journal articles. I think it'd be great to have some comments. If you want to have Ed Richter go to a care meeting of some kind and let them tell him what their concerns are. This is the time to start, I think, back into the public process of bringing the community up to speed, everybody on board, everybody, let's hear your questions, let's hear your concerns, let's talk through them, because we're now starting to head towards a policy of, let's apply this in a way that is good for Middletown. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just asked, did you say Ed Richter?
Yeah. He's covering Middletown for the Journal. So I'd like to bring him to the November 8th meeting I told him, I said, if you guys don't want him here, I'll tell him he can't come yet. It's a private meeting. It's not public. But I think we're about time to have them start talking about this publicly and let people start asking the questions that they want to ask. Do you see any problem with that? Or if you do, speak up.
He's been pretty straight up, I think.
I think he's pretty straightforward. And again, those hard questions should be answered and asked. I mean, that's why we're doing all this. That's why I've put so much time into this, is we want to get everybody as much as possible to say, I understand what you're doing, and we want our neighborhoods to be better, and as long as we're part of the process, we're willing to try. So that's all I've got for tonight. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Yes,
He
ma'am.
could be our ad man then, he can get the word out.
I can get the word out. I can go talk to anybody that wants to talk to me or at me.
Saying Ed could get the word out.
Ed can, yeah. Ed can, yes.
I have apologies from Reverend Torrey. We had a death of a 7-month-old in our church
Oh.
meeting. And she sent a text to say that she had been up all night. The funeral was yesterday, so we were all kind of not too
Very
thrilled that
sad.
she had
Yeah.
had that SIDS experience earlier on. So she sent an apology, and at the last minute, Mark had a babysitting issue. So, and I apologize for being late because this is the second day of the after-school program. So
Awesome.
we're still dealing with
Logistics, yeah. Thank you for coming tonight. We'll try to get a couple emails out and really encourage the whole group to come back together. I know everybody's got life and things going on, but maybe we can get the entire group back together in November, or at least everybody that is able to, and see if we can't, have a robust discussion. I think it should be you ask the hard questions, because if we don't have the answers, we're probably not ready to move forward yet. So.
And perhaps the article will solicit questions that we may not have considered, or
And that's great,
that's the other side.
because
that
we'll continue to.
Some citizen is going to have an opinion and have a thought that, what about this, or et cetera, that.
Yeah, and the answer, I may have an answer, or I may say, you're right, we need to answer that. As we look at a neighborhood, we need to make sure we ask that question before we go too far. So those are exactly right.
Do you have any neighborhoods in your mind that might be a good candidate for to have an entrance way
I haven't, I've been so busy trying to get each one of these done. It takes hours to get each of these ready and get pictures and everything.
A neighborhood based on just how it sets, as far as what borders it,
Yeah.
streets,
Yeah.
parks, whatever.
Well, that's why I'm hoping that gives me 2 months, October, November to December, to find those and create some maps for us. And I may even blow them up like I did those big boards and lay them around. So they may be up on the wall, but on the Jumbotron, but also have some maps that we can sit on the ground here and walk around and talk out and point out, oh, that one's on this street, exactly what you're talking about. Big enough that you can see the borders of the streets.
There's
And
some old maps around that have the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
on 'em.
I'll see what I can find.
Go back to the old Workman Stewart,
Yeah, probably.
all the different, but, I'm also thinking about neighborhoods. As a kid growing up,
we had all the different elementary schools, and that was kind of that
Neighborhood.
Thank you.
neighborhood. But we also, you were talking about parks, we had the Green Box program.
That,
And the Green Box program was run by,
your Department of Recreation.
yes.
Is that where toys and stuff were in the box?
Well, they had these big green boxes.
Yeah.
And it ran from, I think, 9:30 to noon.
Thank you so
and then
much.
5 to 7, Monday through Thursday, I think it was. And they had a couple of adults.
Referees.
Yeah,
My sister was one of them.
But yeah, there were
And
adults.
you did different crafts and games and Foursquare and I can't remember for the life of me.
Carom thing.
Well,
that
we had
they put
carom,
on
but what was the one where it had the scoop and you would put rocks in there and I forget it.
Well, ironically enough, you're saying that because the park board is talking about trying to re-implement that program.
are they?
It is what I'm hearing is neighborhoods, but I'm thinking in today's term versus, and I'm not saying the good old days, but in those days past that I remember, everybody had their own neighborhood, and then you had sports competition between those neighborhoods in the summertime, and that's how a neighborhood was defined. So how do we define? I guess
Right.
you asked the question, how do we define neighborhoods?
Right.
How are they defined now?
Yeah, I mean, I've got geographic based on maps that people have given me
Yeah,
from years ago, and that might be helpful. If I lay out 7, you go, yeah, those don't really aren't the neighborhoods. This should come over 2 more streets. That's helpful, because
We also look at the fact that the way things have changed with the way the sports are done now, and et cetera. I remember different, there still are some different teams. I remember the different colored jerseys for whatever, whether it was the baseball team or the football team or whoever it was. There was, Dick's Sporting Good or whoever took
Sponsored,
care of it,
yeah.
or et cetera. But that many of the children now who are pretty much not doing anything are those who can't afford to pay.
right.
Or there's not enough scholarship money because somebody's done something. But those are the kids that are left in the neighborhoods using the parks with no particular activities.
Right.
And that's, so they look very different. And how the children even at Baltimore Park or Oakland Park, whatever
Yeah.
we're calling it.
Yeah.
They had the summer free food program. They allowed them not to have to eat there because they were worried about their safety. That should never be.
That should never be.
That should just never be.
If you've been down on the riverfront down at Cincinnati, if you go right along there, they've got, and I actually took pictures of them, they've got like ping pong tables made out of cement and foosball tables, and they're like like they're not going anywhere for years. And so I talked to the park staff. I go, well, don't people like steal the ping pong balls? I go, yeah, we just plan on going through 5,000 ping pong balls every year. That's the cost of, we put the foosball table and the ping pong table there, and I forget what else was there, but there was like the things that we had played as a kid but they're made out of cement and they're good quality. It's not like a rough cement. I mean, it's a nice polished, heavy duty. You're not going to lift it up and put it in your car. Stuff that they put at the parks, and they go, we just understand that, yeah, they're going to get lost. They're going to end up in the toilet. They're going to end up, people are going to take them home for their ping pong table. That's just a cost of what providing the service is. I went, I never thought about it that way. But there's a lot of stuff like that we could incorporate into some of our parks that we could probably do some cool stuff. And then if you could get the Y to run a certain number of programs, and you could get something like the Green Box, again, maybe it's not going to be ideal because of our finances, but if we could get from 0 to 30, we'd at least be from 0 to 30. If it takes us a while to get to 100, so be it. But 30 would be a whole lot better than 0, which is what we got now.
Every now and then we get a lot of free advertising on WLW when they talk about the pickle park.
Yeah.
The pickle.
Yeah.
Segdenison. And I've talked to my friends who started playing it, and they really like it. Is there any? I mean, the crazy idea is to make this the capital of Ohio or
Right.
United States.
Pickleball cap?
Yeah.
All of that's possible. Those are if it isn't pickleball, do something else, Doesn't matter. But it would be neat to start looking at the Green Box, the Y, Again, some of those amenities, there's some cool amenities out there that I'd never seen before. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Because I sat and played with that stuff downtown. I'm like, yeah, it really is made of cement. And then I'm like, but you're not going to rough your hands up on it because it's very polished cement. I don't know what you call it, but it's very smooth. And even like the foosball, or you can play foosball, but that foosball table is not going anywhere and it's not going to break. I mean, unless you take a hammer to it. You could make it break, but
There's urge, let's see, the Healthy Middletown, Coalition for Healthy Middletown, Pastors Network is asking for churches to adopt a park. So on one hand, it's the movie in the park with the inflatable screen
Right.
that's going around, but there could also be, in some of the churches with manpower, perhaps they would be able to look at something else when we talk about adopting a park beside planting flower bushes. Maybe they would be available to provide some volunteers to staff it a couple of hours in the summer, or something very organized that there are ways.
and yeah, those parks have different amenities. A lot of them. There's a few of them that have tennis courts. There's a few that have basketball courts. There's a few that have a sand volleyball or whatever that you could you put together a sand volleyball league 1 or 2 nights a week, whatever. Could you a youth basketball, a youth tennis instructional league, or whatever. Use the amenities that we have and get some expertise in those areas. And again, if we could get from 0 to 30 or 40, so we're not at 100. We were at
We're
0.
already talking about adopting a park. Perhaps when you talk about adoption, you may add a few, just like with children, they grow and they have different requirements.
Yeah. So, and again, once we pick a neighborhood that we're going to work on, it's like Oakland. If he's going to do Oakland, the Oakland Park there, it's Baltimore. That's part of that neighborhood. So, and there are some really cool modern parks things being done across the country. I wouldn't, if you're going to do Oakland, I wouldn't put a Band-Aid on it. I wouldn't put $4,000 into it. I'd put $50,000 into it. Let's really transform that park. And yes, I have 30 of them, and I'm only doing it because this is a neighborhood we're working on. That's the park we're going to transform. You got to see if you can get your neighborhood second. You know what I mean? Because I think if you got 2 neighborhoods done, the other 5 are going to be going, us next, please. And so if we could get 1 or 2 big successes, wow, the park's wonderful, the gateway's wonderful, houses are filling up. Gosh, this is beautiful. I can't believe this is this neighborhood.
And then the auxiliary piece being those that were not immediately in the square, there's some support so that if you want to
add on to the
make
success,
sure
we'd
that
love to
there's
have you.
some support there to help make it happen at a
Yeah.
reasonable,
So I won't keep any more, but that's kind of where we're headed. And again, in November, we'll talk to Dan, and again, be ready to ask him hard questions. He should be able to answer them. And in December, we'll start talking about, all right, now we know what we're going to try to do in general. How do we apply it? How do we pick a neighborhood, and how do we apply it specifically to 500, 600, 800 homes in a certain geographic area? I appreciate your time as always. I really do. This is a long, hard, complicated thing that we've never tried to do before. So,
About gateways and landscaping.
yeah. What about it?
It would be a neat thing to select an area,
That was well suited.
that would be kind of already easy to work on
Yeah.
and put something kind of neat there.
And I've talked to Celeste in the past. I said there are models out there that you start building neighborhood pride by putting different amenities in different neighborhoods. And so let's say you got 3 neighborhoods, 1, 2, 3. Everything in this neighborhood is going to have wrought iron fences and pink flowered trees and brown street signs. But you start building an identity that you know you're in this neighborhood because all the certain things of it look the same. And when you cross over to this neighborhood, the gateway looks different. Now there are purple trees, purple flowered trees, and wood fences, and the third neighborhood has, and the idea being, this is my neighborhood, look at the cool crap we got. This is pretty. And I know when I walk over there, I'm in a different neighborhood because it's pretty too, but it's changed. And so that's another style of what people do in different neighborhoods is they start designing in things that they like, well, if we're going to have fences in our neighborhood, why don't we make them all wrought iron no longer than 3 feet high? All right, let's get into some of that stuff and figure out how we would use those effectively, not only for ornamental and pretty stuff, let's also set them up in a way that it deters crime and does other things. Again, try to put the whole package together so that we're really doing cool things in the neighborhood.
There's a couple areas down in Hamilton, I don't know if they've been like that since the beginning of time, but they've got divided streets, and the median in the middle is landscape.
Yeah.
Really
Really pretty.
pleasant, yeah.
And then we're going to have to talk about if we're going to do that, which is cool. How do we keep it up? Do we have a homeowner association for the Baltimore neighborhood? Every month on your water bill, I'm going to charge you 25 cents, which is going to give me $10,000 a year from all those homes, and I'm going to use it to maintain those medians, those beautiful medians we're going to put in, and whatever. Those are all the kinds of things we can talk about. And then, that's where you get the community involved, and they go, well, I won't do that. Well, then I can't. I'll grass the median, but I can't put in all these good stuff because there's no one to pay for it.
What are you gonna do with these jealous, fully tax-paying communities?
What about them?
They see all these amenities going.
Hopefully their crime's going down as a city. Hopefully the schools are going up and we're helping them. I mean, the more property taxes we get, the more income taxes we get, the better we can do everybody, all ships rise. Yeah. That's where the money needs to be spent. I mean, nobody's going to be happy. I mean, this is one of those that there's always going to be somebody that thinks it's a bad idea. And they're probably not completely wrong. Oh, you're spending all the money here. We're not getting any. There's some truth to that. But maybe you'll get some doing other things.
But that's the difference between equity and equality.
Right.
Having to, how everyone looks like they're at a relatively similar level, and I'm not even talking about socioeconomic or anything,
Right.
but you don't see behind the fence. Some people are standing on a bigger cinder block, and other people aren't standing on anything at all.
Exactly right.
So, in reality, that just is what it is,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I would look at the people on the East End that says, would never go downtown, you'll get shot down there, and go, we're changing all that. I mean, that's not true. I mean, downtown's nice now. But again, if you're afraid to go in the South End, look at what we've done. There isn't a part of this town that you should be afraid of, nor should they be afraid to come this way, which is hard. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the South End and talked to somebody about the beautiful senior center we got over on Central Avenue, and they said, I would never go there. I would never go there. That's for white people. I've been told that, I bet, a dozen times. I'm like, yeah, but like you're paying taxes for it. You should go. I would never do that. All right, well, then we still got a lot of work to do. We still got a lot of work to do. Thank you all. Have a good night. Thank you for bearing with me.
Temporary permit.
For sign?
Sign,
Yes, ma'am.
Is it something, is there something, application